And then I would highly advise, we're on number 3 now, that you should start with the Living Atlas of the World. The Living Atlas of the World. As the name implies, you can click on the Living Atlas of the World there, number 3. It's valuable for several reasons. ArcGIS Online has millions, since you and I have been chatting about GIS today, thousands of content items have been published in ArcGIS Online. Thousands. That said, the subset of ArcGIS Online is called the Living Atlas of the World. As you know from that nerdy diagram I showed upstairs, I used to work for these federal agencies, and every one of those agencies, NOAA, Census Bureau, USGS, had a noble goal of let's create a content portal so that people can access our data. Those are still good portals from those agencies and other organizations. USGS, for example, has nationalmap.gov. It's a portal for digital elevation models, digital line graphs, so vector data, some raster data. It still exists, but all of those have limitations. They're just one agency, and they also had struggles, not to bore you with all kinds of details, but you're in a university here, so you can relate. There's challenges. In the case of federal agencies, and state and local as well, but they're funded, right, for a fiscal year, and it's like, ooh, do we have someone to carry this initiative forward in the subsequent years? So nationalmap.gov, data.gov, let's have a whole portal for all the federal agencies. So it was called Geospatial One Stop for a while, then it got folded into data.gov, and data.gov can be a valuable resource too, but they are all limited in their scope in part because of funding and staffing, but also that the data are meant to serve a very, very wide geospatial and non-geospatial community. The National Atlas, geospatial.gov, etc. But the Living Atlas, living in 2 ways. The content is in part fed by live Internet of Things sensors. The stream flow, the wildfire perimeters, the earthquake monitoring system, the seismic system, et cetera. So it's living in terms of, kind of getting a sense of the Earth as a dynamic planet and the things that sort of make the world tick. GIS is kind of like a nervous system of the planet, isn't it? I mean, just like the nervous system in your body regulates all your vital organs, and without your nervous system, which we really don't think about every day, we wouldn't be here having this conversation, right, if we didn't have a nervous system. So GIS is the nervous system of the planet, right? It's running the lights in this room, what you had to eat at lunch, which was awesome, by the way. Thank you very much. The Uber rides you've had, the way your bus system in the city runs, right? GIS is behind all of that, which is a bit of a challenge for us in geospatial, right? Because do we still have the physical geographers here? To me, GIS is kind of like a column of sediment. The cobbles and boulders in the sediment, if you took a column, is like the established disciplines: chemistry, biology, etc., mathematics, economics, business. The sand grains are like the geospatial, right? They're hard to grab, they're hard to articulate to others that we want to say what the value of this was. So that's always been a challenge. But because of that, geospatial has been a bit elusive, right, in terms of where is the one-stop data source. There is no one-stop. That's the good news and bad news. This comes, though, as close as possible to this sort of grand idea of a one-stop shop for geospatial data. It's not the end-all be-all, and admittedly, it is biased toward GIS users. That's one of the advantages, of course, to our community, but biased in the sense that the data services that are here, vector and raster data services, are easier to import into your GIS than any other platform because it's all built on the same family of, ArcGIS in this case. If you're using QGIS or some other GIS, you can still use this data as well. So I like to start with the Living Atlas. There are a couple of things that we should pay attention to that I think are rather underappreciated, and one of them is over in the apps zone in the upper right. Let's just take one of these apps. For those of you that are working with your colleagues that, well, you're trying to get them past the notion of maps as reference documents, like where is Rochester, where is New York, where is the North America, etc., to analytical tools, right? Maps as analytical tools. To me, if you get them to understand maps as analytical tools and not just reference documents, like where is something, but actually why things are where they are, and not only that, but how we can make things better in our communities in the future, then I think you've succeeded in large part. But one of the tools on here in this app zone, and these are wonderful to train your fellow colleagues and getting them to think about maps as analytical tools, is the Wayback imagery. You've got terabyte loads of satellite imagery at your fingertips here in the Wayback imagery. So let's just go there. And the reason why I like to show this is that, number one, you've got this a little bit of metadata telling you what it is. We can view applications, so it's just a web mapping application, no login required on any of these apps. So I'm going to go to View Application for the Wayback imagery. And now you really don't need me to tell you how to do this, right? You've got a swipe tool on the left. You can put different dates on the left side and right side. Go ahead and try that. So you get a little swipe image going on. And the default location of this, we have an extra water bottle. We have an extra phone thing for whoever can say where this is located, the default location of this web mapping application. Thank you very much. Yes, exactly. It's Las Vegas. Now, at one glance, this is the power of mapping in GIS. You can see what's going on. What is the main thing that's happening on the landscape right here in this default location? What kind of stands out to you?
They're building.
Massive urban sprawl. Okay, is this a wet environment? For those of you that know something about this area, we zoomed out. Okay, so why do we care if there's massive amounts of, look, there's a big IKEA at this intersection, whereas just a few years ago it was mainly cholla and a couple rattlesnakes and mesquite, maybe? Then if we zoomed out, right, and we panned over to the east, there's another issue on our planet, right, that we care about, and that is, oh, thank you. So at one glance you can see, oh, that island is now connected to the mainland. Yikes. So, level one, we're using a web mapping application. An application is, do they still make Lunchables? Yes. Okay. Remember, you get like 2 crackers, 3 pieces of cheese, 2 carrots, and you can't modify it, right? It comes in these compartments. That's it. That is, to me, roughly analogous to a web mapping application. This is pre-packaged based on the person that created the web mapping application. You, being the empowered GIS community, you have the ability to create your own web mapping applications. You can create a swipe map. You can make these kinds of things so that your end user's experience, whether it's your board of directors, whether it's your provost, whether it's your deans, your students, whoever you're working with, sees it as you've created it. So you have the capability of consuming these, but also the capability of creating these, which is a wonderfully empowering thing. But the way it's created is you're designing it to be consumed by your end customer, users, students, etc. So that's level one, web mapping application. No sign-in required here. All of these are similar in that respect here in the Living Atlas apps. But the level two, because I know it's the NCC community, you want to dig deeper. Ooh, yeah. Level two is I can take the data and in the upper left, I can share that, but I can also go into the data itself is a web service. It's a data service. It's an image data service. So inside ArcGIS Online, and also by extension taking it into ArcGIS Pro, you actually have all of the terabyte loads of satellite imagery at your fingertips too. Why would you ever want to move it out of or feed it out of the web mapping application into ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Pro? Because in those two instances, then you have all those other analytical capabilities at your fingertips, which the creator of this web mapping application did not give you, right? You can't see multi-band imagery. You can't say, well, I really want to add the land cover or the land use on here or the water quality in Lake Mead. You can't add things, right? The person that created this application does not allow you to do that. So to take it into level 2 is to take the image source from this into ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Pro. So I just wanted to plant that idea that in every one of these applications, you have the application as it's set up, but you also have the access to the data that underlies all of these, whether it's this one or, as you saw, the drought-aware app, the live feeds, the Sentinel-2 Land Cover Explorer. All of these have the data underlying the web mapping application. So, okay, that's good to know. And that is, in part, why I think the Living Atlas of the World is one way to go. And so, for this next part of the activity, I'd love for us to go to back to home for the Living Atlas of the World. And let's do this. Let's say, let's look at tornado tracks. Tornado tracks. So here we've got an example of the myriad of different data types that are inside the Living Atlas of the World. Are there more than 2 related, in this case, it's a feature service. So it's a data service. It's got a URL. So we looked up tornado tracks just under home in the Living Atlas of the World. This one might have some hailstorm paths that are related to tornadoes. I'm not exactly sure why that's appearing here, but the one we're going to use is this tornado tracks. A little bit of metadata here that we can dig into when we fully open it up. And this relates to our future data quality discussion, 1950 to 2022. So we're going to have a wide range of years, and we're going to have tornado tracks. How did we know where tornadoes occurred in 1950, 1960, 1970? Before Doppler radar, before...
We just would see the tracks on the landscape.
Okay, so evidence on the landscape. Okay, yep, I'm right with you. I see that those trees have all been felled over there in that stand of forest, or reported in local newspapers, right? Or, you know, that tornado went into that store and it was reported in the local newspaper, et cetera. So it's good that we have these wide ranges of years, but remember, sometimes we're mixing different data quality. Not that it was necessarily bad, right, years ago, but we don't have the confidence that it was at that square meter of the Earth's surface where the tornado actually touched down. So we're going to talk about that in a bit. But it's a feature service, tornado tracks. We can open it up in ArcGIS Online without an actual sign-in. So there's a lot we can do actually in ArcGIS Online without signing in. So I'm going to go ahead and click on tornado tracks. I've got a little bit of metadata. I know it came from NOAA and anecdotal accounts, and et cetera, back into the 1950s. There's a lot more metadata here in this, what we call the item content page, the item content page. Notice in the upper right, some of you might have noticed this in the past. You've got, without boring you with a whole lot of detail, Map Viewer Classic is JavaScript 3.x, basically. We had ArcGIS Online came around in 2010. The very first fully Web GIS Institute I taught was in that year at the University of Oklahoma. And I thought, ooh, is this going to work? It's 3 days long. It's only web tools. I don't have my desktop GIS to work with. I want it to be fully online. And it worked. But 2010 to 2020 or so, 2021, we had this JavaScript 3.x based Map Viewer Classic. And that is the online, SaaS-based, software as a service, ArcGIS Online. It's still around. Esri's very forgiving on, let's kind of try to migrate the data user community into newer tools, but let's not disenfranchise them and cut off millions of people using certain tools by saying you cannot use like ArcMap. Some of you remember ArcGIS Desktop or ArcMap. How many of you ever used ArcMap? Couple folks. Okay. When you look behind someone's shoulder, it looks really clunky. But for its time, it was the first graphical user interface major fully desktop product that we had. And some people are still using it. But we are trying to say, please migrate to ArcGIS Pro because we're not going to support ArcMap anymore because it's based on old technology that we can no longer support. So you can, here under desktop, say you can still, for at least a little while longer, open an ArcMap, don't go there.